All right.
Hello, Los Santos. The GTA Online community is angry, not mildly irritated, not disappointed for an afternoon. Angry in the way players become angry when something they have spent years learning suddenly changes underneath them. Heist payouts have been reduced for repeated completions. Cayo Perico targets have been reworked again. Activities that players learned, practiced, optimized and built entire routines around now lose value after the first completion of the week. And the immediate conclusion is obvious. Rockstar is attacking grinders. I understand that conclusion. But before we decide who is guilty, we need to examine the complete structure, because the players are not entirely innocent here. Neither is Rockstar. For years, the GTA Online community has searched for every possible way to compress the game. Players calculated the most profitable activities. They reduced missions into routes. They discovered which setups could be skipped, which businesses could run in the background, which heists produced the best hourly return, and which activities were no longer worth touching. Some players went further. Replay methods, AFK systems, vehicle duplication, mod menus, money drops. Anything that allowed the player to bypass Rockstar's intended progression became part of the underground economy of GTA Online. And even among legitimate players, optimization became the game inside the game. We were no longer simply robbing El Rubio. We were conducting quarterly efficiency reviews on his security infrastructure. So yes, from Rockstar's perspective, there was a problem. GTA Online contains years of missions, businesses, properties, heists and contact work, but large portions of that content became economically irrelevant because players naturally concentrated on the activities that respected their time the most. If one mission pays more, takes less time and can be completed alone, players are going to repeat it. That is not abuse. That is literacy. But from the perspective of a live service company, literacy can become dangerous. Once the player learns the system loses some control over the player. That is where this update becomes more interesting than a basic payout nerf. Rockstar says the new weekly structure encourages variety. Complete an activity for the first time during the week and receive the stronger reward. Repeat that activity during the same period and receive less. On the surface, that makes sense. Rotate through the content. Play the casino heist, run Clucking Bell, visit Dr. Dre, return to the original heists, try something other than stealing the same bottle of tequila from the same island for the 800th time. There is a legitimate argument there. A game containing more than a decade of content should give players reasons to experience more than 2 profitable activities. But encouraging variety and punishing repetition are not the same thing. Rockstar could have increased the weaker activities. It could have left established payouts untouched and placed larger bonuses on underused content. It could have rewarded players for moving around the catalog without reducing the value of the methods they already mastered. Instead, Rockstar chose a different structure. The first completion is rewarded, the second is devalued. That is not simply an economic adjustment, that is behavioral management. And this is where I disagree with the idea that GTA Online's economy was somehow broken. What exactly was the old economy damaging? GTA dollars do not leave Rockstar's controlled environment. Players are not setting independent prices. We cannot manufacture an Oppressor Mk 2 and sell it to another player. We cannot purchase a mansion, renovate it and place it on an open real estate market. We cannot negotiate the cost of a supercar based on supply and demand. Rockstar controls what enters the economy. Rockstar controls what leaves the economy. Rockstar controls the payouts, the prices, the discounts, the bonuses, the properties, the vehicles and the services. If players accumulate too much money, Rockstar can introduce something expensive. They have demonstrated considerable talent in that department. So this is not conventional inflation management. The economy was not collapsing because too many players completed Cayo Perico. The actual resource being managed is not GTA dollars, it is player time. The payout determines how long a player must remain inside the system before reaching the next goal. Reduce the payout, and the vehicle does not become more valuable. The player's time becomes less valuable. That distinction matters, because players were already leaving GTA Online before this update. Players were already using glitches. Players were already buying modded accounts. Players were already using AFK methods. Players were already deciding that the legitimate grind required more time than they were willing to give it. The previous payout system did not create those behaviors by being too generous. Those behaviors existed because many players no longer considered the exchange between time and reward reasonable. Reducing legitimate payouts does not remove that problem. It increases the pressure that created it. And that is why even creators who have spent years opposing money glitches are beginning to understand why players use them. Understanding is not endorsement, but a system cannot repeatedly increase the labor, reduce the reward, and then act surprised when participants search for an exit. That pattern is not unique to GTA Online. Any system dependent on continued participation eventually studies how its participants become independent of it. The player becomes faster. The system adds a cooldown. The player becomes efficient. The system changes the probability. The player develops a routine. The system introduces a weekly reset. The player masters the work. The system reduces the reward for repeating it. This is how managed systems evolve. They do not always prevent success. Sometimes they redefine success so that reaching it still requires continued dependence on the system. That does not mean someone at Rockstar is sitting in an office personally angry because a player completed Clucking Bell in 45 minutes. The structure is larger than that. A live service survives through continued engagement. A player, however, uses mastery to reduce required engagement. Those two objectives eventually collide. The player wants mastery to create freedom. The platform needs mastery to create another cycle. That is the conflict underneath this update. And to be fair, Rockstar has continued adding content, new properties, new vehicles, new missions, new heists, new systems. It would be inaccurate to say players have received nothing. But content is not the same as reciprocity. Rockstar gives players access to content while retaining complete authority over its value. You may purchase the property, you may master the mission, you may organize your account around a business, but the reward attached to that activity can still be changed after the fact. The player owns the mansion. Rockstar owns the meaning of the mansion. The player owns the vehicle. Rockstar owns the conditions under which the money was earned. The player can master the existing rules. The player cannot prevent those rules from being rewritten. And that brings us to GTA 6. There is no confirmed structure for the next GTA Online. We do not know whether Los Santos will connect to Vice City. We do not know whether Liberty City will eventually enter the same network. We do not know whether travel will happen through airports, boats, trains, property menus, or some entirely different system. We do not know whether characters, money, or businesses will transfer. But we can still examine what Rockstar may be learning. A future online world containing multiple regions, years of expansions, and a much larger economy would require tighter control over player progression. Rockstar would need to understand how quickly players accumulate wealth, how often they repeat profitable content, how long they remain active after purchasing everything they want, how weekly rotations influence behavior, how older activities can be kept relevant, how quickly experienced players can dismantle a new economy through optimization. GTA Online gives Rockstar more than a decade of behavioral data. Every heist completed, every business ignored, every vehicle purchased, every weekly bonus exploited, every shortcut discovered, every hour spent inside the system. So it is reasonable to ask whether these changes are only about the final months of GTA Online, or whether GTA Online is becoming a testing ground for the economic structure that follows it. That remains a theory, but it is a theory supported by the direction of the system. Rockstar is moving away from unrestricted repetition and towards scheduled value. The activity is not simply worth what the mission pays. Its value now depends on when you completed it, how many times you completed it, and whether Rockstar currently wants players participating.
May I help you, sir?
That is a major shift.
A party, sir?
It turns the economy
Wonderful.
into a timetable. And once the economy becomes a timetable, the player is no longer simply choosing how to make money. The platform is choosing when that choice will be respected. This is why the community reaction cannot be dismissed as entitlement. Players are not only upset because a number became smaller, they are reacting because the relationship between effort and mastery has changed. A player spent years learning how to operate efficiently. The system observed that efficiency and recalibrated the reward. The players learned how to beat the grind. Rockstar did not remove the grind. It changed the rules so that beating it would no longer free the player from it. Still, the community should also recognize its own role. When every activity is judged only by dollars per hour, the rest of the game becomes invisible. When one heist dominates every conversation, other content becomes abandoned. When players bypass every inconvenience, the developer eventually responds by building stronger barriers. The community optimized GTA Online until optimization itself became the target. But Rockstar holds the greater responsibility because Rockstar holds the greater power. The company controls the prices. The company controls the payouts. The company controls the schedule. The company controls the paid alternatives. And when the company changes the exchange after players have invested their time, it cannot place the entire responsibility on player behavior. This is not a simple story of greedy players against an innocent company. It is not a simple story of an evil company attacking innocent players. It is a struggle between player mastery and platform control. The player asks, how efficiently can I use this system? The platform asks, how long can this system continue using the player? And somewhere between those two questions sits the GTA Online economy. The economy was not broken. The player was becoming too efficient.
But I think it's best
and this update is not merely changing how much a heist pays. It is changing who controls the value of the player's time after the player becomes good enough to control it for himself.